Hi, I'm Lindsay, host of the Live Like Eden podcast. What do you do when your whole life flips upside down? Are you questioning everything, lost in chaos, or yearning for life's deeper meaning? I've been there, deep in the thick of it, unraveling my own awakening mess for over 20 years. Now I'm here to help you through yours. I share no-nonsense weekly wake-ups, cutting through the ego's illusions to wake you up to your own spiritual wisdom. No mountaintop bliss needed here, just practical tools, insights, and real-life experience to save you time. Plus, a much-needed laugh when we're all losing it. Let's dive into this fresh new episode. I have a question for you. Why is it when your smoke detector is losing its battery that it decides to chirp the most annoying sound in the world at like 2:30 in the morning? What the hell is that? Last night, my husband and I are woken up to this chirp. And I thought, oh no, here we go. Every 30 seconds or every minute, it's chirp. Of course, it's in our room. And long story short, we didn't have a battery. So we don't have a battery. The thing's just so annoying. It's loud in our room. So we decided to migrate to another room to sleep in. Meanwhile, it's like 3 a.m. We're tired. I go into this dream, and I swear I have a point to this story. It's leading me into this topic today. I go into this very lucid dream. I know I've had shows talking about dreams, symbolism of dreams, and lucid dreaming where you know that you are dreaming. So I go to sort of this half sleep situation, right? Because I'm wired from trying to fix the smoke detector. I'm not fully rested yet, but I start to go into a dream, and I'm in my house in this dream. In the dream, I am taking my dog Shiva out to go to the bathroom, and the house looks exactly the same in the dream that it does in my reality. So at first I think I'm dreaming, but as I go and I take the dog out front and I come back in, I notice this very dark figure in my kitchen. And at first it kind of jolts me, but then I go, wait, this is a dream. There isn't anybody in the kitchen. So already I'm knowing I'm dreaming. Yet I'm continuing to walk through the house, and I start walking up the stairs, and I look down and see one of our other rooms. All the lights are on, and there's all these little kid toys in it, which our kids are not little. We have no toys anymore. And again, I know I'm dreaming. I walk up the stairs, down the hallway to where I'm going to go sleep, and I say, this is a dream. So I'm just going to lift up out of the body. So in the hallway, I just lift up out of the body and feel this expansive, no connection to the body sensation as I'm sleeping in the bed. Now, I've had many experiences like this while I'm dreaming. Maybe you have too. If any of you in your dreams, you're just flying and you can actually feel this very surreal, boundless feeling as your body is literally in the bed. I took this dream as a symbol. That's the key word today, is symbol. It was like I was speaking about in the last episode where we were talking about bringing illusions to truth and how A Course in Miracles is basically saying this whole thing is a dream. We are literally dreaming. In my dream last night, it's like I knew I was dreaming and I pulled myself out of the body. And as I woke up, I was like, it was a dream. And that's the same kind of thing we were talking about last episode that the Course is hinting us toward, is it's no different than this reality that one day we will wake up and return home. But while we're here, looking in the dream, living in this reality, getting very involved in it, right? I was really irritated by that stupid sound of the battery situation of the smoke detector. But the symbolism is key in life. You see symbols all over the place as we move through this reality, don't we? And what I want to do today is pony off the last show. If we're really looking at, instead of bringing God into the world, we're asking if we can take all the illusion of the world and hand it back to God. We're returning, like we're going the opposite direction and returning to the Godhead, or returning to God is our home in reality. And if we are going to do that, symbolism is kind of a big deal for some people. Look at all the major things in the world that use symbolism. So I want to talk briefly about just symbols as illusions, and then we'll look at the big daddy. Probably the biggest showdown of symbolism is in religion with God versus the devil and all the symbols involved there. And I want to just touch on the occult. There's a huge idea out there that some of these symbols in the occult or the esoteric teachings that are more like secret society type things are evil. And I want to look at that a little bit. Not in great depth, but just let's talk about it for a second. And then lastly, I want to talk about sacred symbols, how you can use things in the world as a reminder of home. So let's start with symbols as illusions. So if everything in the dream, just like last episode, is really an illusion, that would mean, from a Course in Miracles perspective, that literally everything in this world is not what we think it is. So anything of the world that has symbolism, and this includes sacred sites, sacred symbolism. There's a lot of places. I was recently at the Garden of the Gods doing some hiking, and I was hiking around with my mom, and I said, oh, I feel like there's a vortex right here. It's just expanding in all directions. There's places like in Sedona, Arizona, where they talk about all these vortexes, spiritual portals, things like that. Even then, they'll say these are sacred sites. Maybe there's places all over the world like this. And is that really true? If A Course in Miracles is saying everything here is not what you think it is it true that anything here has any real value or any sacred anything? And that's a question to ask yourself. Does it actually mean anything, or is it only meaning something because we're giving it meaning? And that's kind of where I'm going today, is what is the inherent meaning of anything we see unless we are projecting a meaning onto it? Like if you were just walking in the world and you had no mind, okay? Let's just say you had no thought and you just walk and you were looking at objects. Would you have any idea what the hell you were looking at? Would it mean anything to you? I don't know, because most of us don't walk through the world without a thought or a judgment going on in the back of our head, right? Like, what is that? What are those people doing over there? Why does that look like that? How often is your mind just chattering about everything you see? So it's almost like we don't even know what that would be like. But if you just imagine for a second, if you took the definition and meaning out of anything, would anything even have a name? Would there be language at all? Or would you just simply be wandering around? So it's always something to think about with symbolism in general. Does it really mean anything? What's one of the number one ways that companies communicate to us? Big, huge companies and corporations have their what? Logo. They have their symbol. We all know the arches, right? One of the most recognized logos in the world, or branding in the world, is the arches, right? McDonald's. What about the Nike swoosh? Most people know what that is. They don't even have to say their name. It's just a little image, a symbol. That's all it is. The Starbucks symbol, if we're driving across the country and there's nothing in sight and all of a sudden I see the Starbucks symbol, I'm like, yes, there we go. We're pulling off. Symbolism is a communication. If a company is giving that symbol a meaning or a branding, you know what it means. My question is, does it really mean anything in the big picture? But we can give symbols a lot of power, so much power that they can sway our opinion on something. They can ignite fear because we see a symbol that may associate with something that was not good, right? We can get triggered by symbols. Now, the question I have is, have some of these symbols been misinterpreted, reinterpreted, rebranded over time? If you've ever done a deep dive into history and looking at all the different symbols throughout the ages, there's definitely evidence that certain symbols were not what we see them as today. I'm not going to go into that now, but you can certainly look that up. And every group has some kind of symbol or flag or, something to define themselves so that when you see that it has some meaning for you. I think this is a slippery slope because these can have more power than they need to over us. They can be hugely distracting. And the other thing that can happen is they may invoke so much fear that we're then afraid to explore something that may not be terrifying at all. It might not be scary at all. And as A Course in Miracles said, and I went over it last episode, is if this world is nothing more than the ego's world, a made-up reality that's simply being projected, we're projecting it outside of ourselves and looking into a made-up reality, then all the symbolism involved in it can be equally distracting and can end up being a trap to keep us in the world. That could absolutely be happening. And what's one of the biggest players in the world to do that? Religion. So let's get into this. This is where it all goes down. This is the showdown. Good versus evil. If you want to boil down the whole world, that's what it is. Good versus evil. There's the split mind, the projection immediately. God is good, the devil is bad. That's where that's coming from. When the Bible even says it. Don't go to the devil. He's very tempting. And if you do those things, you'll go to hell, right? And I went over this last episode. but it's a huge symbol. If people are really believing the Bible as literal, then I'm assuming it's going to invoke a lot of fear that the devil is evil. These evil things of the world are going to be awful for me. I'm a bad person. You know, the rabbit hole you're going to go down there. There's a huge feeling of guilt involved. I won't be able to get into the kingdom. But I have to ask you this, and you can think about it for yourself. What is the devil? Do you believe in the devil? What do you picture it as if you believe in it? Or is it a made-up construct? Have you seen the devil? Have you seen God? Have you seen any of these things that are all over the Bible? And they keep saying the second coming, that Jesus is going to come back. People believing the literal man is going to come back. I haven't seen it. Have you? If the devil or Satan is this evil, demonic force, or a specific angel that was casted out of the kingdom, or, whatever you envision when you hear the word the devil, there is sort of a universal understanding in all of our mind, whether we were raised religious or not. There's a deep conditioning that there's good and evil in the world, even if you're not religious. A lot of people believe there are good people and there are bad people. Maybe it's true. Maybe there are people that are just good and there's just people that are bad. I don't know. It seems to me it's a little bit deeper than that. Again, going off if the world is a projection, if we are projecting onto the world stage a literal drama between good and evil, and we're striving for goodness, we're striving to please God, and this would be the God of the Bible. This is not the God of A Course in Miracles. This is the God of the Bible, that we're supposed to do good things to please him, to abide by his rules and earn his love back into the kingdom of heaven with God. And if we don't do those things and we do bad, evil, devilish, satanic things, and we get tempted to do those evil things, we will not be rewarded the kingdom, right? We're going to go to hell. But is any of that real? These symbols of the devil, these symbols that you see of the little fork with the devil and the horns, right? I mean, you could, on any level, they take it to extremes. There's blood dripping all over. You could watch the movies and the devil and Satan. It's like the most disgusting thing you've ever seen, right? Horrific, in fact. And then God represents, there's the angels and the beautiful wings, and they're total opposites. But is it real? Is there really an evil force? What do you think? This is a show, too, to just get you to think. I don't know. I have no idea. It doesn't feel like that to me. I think that we have decisions to make. We are choosing every single moment how we see. Are we going to see through the unconditionally loving eyes of the spiritual side of ourselves? Or are we going to fall into the ego's trap and see separation, pinning us against them, this whole thing that I went over last episode? Or am I going to choose to see that? Now, some would argue, and of course Miracles would say that that is more of the devil, that the ego's creation of separation, of the temptation to see separation, is really, in quotations, the devil. It has nothing to do with an actual entity, person, or spirit doing anything to anyone. It's our own personal belief in it. It's our own personal projection in it. To the contrary, the biblical God is also a symbol. And you always see this like long-haired, very wise man in the clouds, right? That's God. He's our loving Father, awaiting our return. But he's not totally loving, because if you don't do what he says, you're going to the other side. You're immediately banished. And so these are symbols. All of this is symbolic. And religion uses it in a major way by saying that anything outside of that specific religion, it could be any religion, they will enforce to not go outside of their own religion, because that's the devil. That's an evil, tempting situation that is not good, and God will cast you out. Months ago, I interviewed a gal named Brooke Deanne, and she was inside of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and she claims, this is her experience, that it's just a cult. She was raised with the belief that everything outside of that religion, so basically everyone else in the world, was damned to hell. They were the evildoers, and the only people that were going to receive the afterlife were the Jehovah's Witnesses. In that specific religion, they are using fear And they're using the symbol of the devil to keep their people in line, you could argue. They are saying, if you go outside of this, this and this and this is going to happen. Is it true? Does anybody actually know what's going to happen to those people in the afterlife? And that's the question to ask. When you are thinking about religion and the end game is you will not be invited into the kingdom, how does anybody know that? I mean, you don't. The people even saying it don't know. They're not in charge. They have no idea. None of us know that. And people who've had near-death experiences have good and bad experiences. They have experiences all over the place. But the key thing is they come back. So does anybody really know what happens when you don't come back? When you stay? I have no idea. My guess is you could go on dreaming another dream in heaven or hell or whatever you're doing. You're coming back, you're waking fully up, maybe you're returning. There's endless possibility. And so my point is that when religions are using this fear that if you go tap your toe into yoga even, I've seen people too that think yoga is inviting evil spirits and all this stuff. It's like when I did yoga, I felt so sound and grounded. I never felt evil. But that's what I'm talking about. And a lot of that I think is just based on they don't know. They've never done it. They really have no idea. It's something they've been taught. And when you're brainwashed, right, or you're conditioned to believe that anything outside of your own little group, anything outside of what you believe is evil, it's just a way to keep you in it. It's a way to keep the group alive. Cults do this all the time. They use it all the time. They brainwash you so you don't leave. And you keep buying into the whole thing. You keep giving money or you keep doing whatever they need to keep the group alive. And you could argue in religion, they need money. They got to keep everything moving. They still have to pay for things. Things have to keep going. And there always is money involved in any organization in this world. That's just how it works. So you can think about this. I mean, it's the biggest showdown, right? God versus the devil. And I'm asking you to think about it. What do you think about this whole devilish temptation that there's an evil entity out there tempting everyone? Even in other circles, there's this concept of some demonic force that's lurching into everyone and taking over people. And I'm thinking, are we saying that we don't have the power to choose spirit and unconditional love if we want to? Are you literally saying that this evilish, Luciferian, reptilian, whatever, you've heard it all, right? You guys have heard this, that these are all things beyond our control? For me personally, I feel like there's always that choice in the mind that says, I choose to hand over everything I believe to be true to the Holy Spirit. Even if my physical world doesn't look any different, I know that there's something beyond what I'm looking at. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the unknown. I'm okay being guided. I'm okay. And that's really what I'm getting at here is this symbolism that can actually take a hold of your life and prevent you from seeing beyond it. And if you look at it through a Course in Miracles lens, that's the whole point of the ego system, to continue the separation, your belief in it, so that you never see the truth. You never hand it over and return home. So now that I've talked about that, this whole God versus the devil, let's talk about the occult for a minute, because the occult is kind of termed in most circles, especially from religion's point of view, as a bad thing. Like that is an evil situation. You need to look the other way. That is all about Satan and death and blood drinking and, all the horrible things you see out there. My question is that really true? I haven't spent a lot of time researching the occult, but I know about it. I look at things and say, well, is it just misunderstood? Is it just simply a misunderstanding? Or is there more of an agenda behind it? And it might be a little bit of both. So from religion's point of view, right, you've got the cross, which is really representing of Jesus' death on the cross, right? The crucifixion, which I got to be honest, every time I go into a church, which isn't often, but when I'm in one and I see Jesus on the cross, it's like terrifying. I remember my little twin girls, they were in one of my family members' weddings, and one of them was looking up at that, like that scared the crap out of her. And it is, it's kind of an eerie symbol. It's almost like reminding you, he died for you. You better listen. It is kind of a strange thing. I'm like, could we just go with maybe a loving symbol, something that's not so awful looking? But anyway, my point being here is that some of the occult symbols, like the pentagram, for instance, a lot of you've probably heard of the pentagram, and a lot of people associate that with Satan. It's satanic. It's that satanic cult, and they're drawing the pentagram everywhere, and they're killing people. And I don't know. I've never seen that, but I hear about this, so I don't know. But what I will say is that when you research the pentagram and you go a little deeper with it and you go back further, like into esoteric teachings, which in esoteric teachings are a lot of times they're like secret teachings, secret knowledge. Only certain people can know this stuff, which in and of itself is a whole show. Like, what is that all about? But if you look at the pentagram in and of itself, it's just about balance. You got 5 points, right, on the pentagram. Penta means 5. So we got 5 points of balance. Okay. What are they? We're basically talking about the symbolism of harmony, like how you can have harmony in your life. Like, how can you balance the human experience? And the 5 points represent earth, water, fire, air, and spirit. I don't know about any of you, but that doesn't sound that scary. Maybe somebody hijacked it along the way and decided to make it an evil symbol. That's possible, right? But in and of itself, if you look deep enough, that does not sound scary to me. That actually makes sense. And what other system uses very similar points? That's Chinese medicine. Acupuncture. Chinese medicine uses those same things, except in Chinese medicine, they use earth, water, fire, metal, and wood. But you could argue that there's similarities with metal and air, meaning they're using the lungs in Chinese medicine and air you're breathing. And then the wood element, which points to growth, vision, and higher purpose, which could also go hand in hand with the spirit part of the pentagram. So what I'm getting at, and this is not a show to talk about pentagrams and draw them all over the place and, wear one around your neck. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm somebody who's not really into symbols at all, but I find them interesting. I find it really interesting when they get so used in the world. But this doesn't sound that scary. It really doesn't. And it looked like more of a system of how to use nature and the natural elements to balance your life and your body and your experience while you're here. So I'm not sure what could be evil about that. If it's outside of what religion is teaching you, and maybe there's an element of the pentagram that's more individualistic, and when you give the individual power, you give the individual the freedom to wake up on their own. When you're in a group and there's a controlled narrative, it's much harder to free yourself from that because it's so drilled into you, just like a cult would continue the teachings. If you're more into an individualized spiritual study, that's frowned upon in any major group, religion or spirituality or whatever. It's almost threatening, right? We've talked about this before, but the individual is very threatening to the collective. The individual is threatening to a group because the individual has power now. It's seeing outside and it's seeing things differently. And for some reason, groupthink, group mentality is very threatened by that, which is kind of funny. You think about it. Like, why would a huge group be worried about one person? Let them flee the nest and figure it out, right? But that's what I'm getting at, that the power of the symbol is holding over us is truly amazing. Another thing that comes to mind is like snakes are always seen as evil. They're seen as evil in the beginning of the Bible, right? In the garden, the snake, the serpent was tempting, representing the devil. That's evil. But when you look at Kundalini, they use the serpent and the snake as a dormant energy within the spine that rises up for you to unify and have God realization, which again is an individual's path to self with a capital S realization. When you really think about it, when we're talking about waking up from the dream, and we're talking about awakening at the deeper core, it has to be an individual's journey. We're not going to hold hands in a circle and all ascend together. Maybe we can all join together in this world and feel a different frequency and vibration. Yes, all of that is true. What I'm talking about is deeper than that. When we really are ready to return, we all have to walk through that on our own. We have to see the realization on our own. We can have symbols, which we're talking about today, guides, all of it can have symbolism. But in order to wake up, it's an individual path. And that leads me to the next topic, which is how can you use symbols in your life as a means of waking up? How can you use something in your life to help you as a reminder to wake up? without it really meaning anything in the world. For example, I'm a huge lover of natural stone, crystals, anything gorgeous that comes out of the ground. I am like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It just speaks to me. That may not be your thing, but think of something in your life that speaks to you, a symbol, something you love, and then picture it in your mind, or maybe you have it in your house and you look at it. And what does it do to you? How does it make you feel? For me, that beautiful stone makes me feel good. I feel surrounded in beauty, in love and peace and comfort. It reminds me to connect with spirit. So in my life, there was a period of time when I was flailing all over the place and had no idea what I was doing with myself. I was lost at sea. But I did have a couple of crystals that I could put in my hand or I could take in my purse. And any time that I was feeling out there, uncertain, not grounded, expansive, going through these heightened states of awareness where I'm uncomfortable in public, I could look at the crystal or have a crystal around my neck, hold on to it, and remind me to connect with spirit. Now, in and of itself, does that crystal mean anything? Probably not. If everything in the world is illusory, then it doesn't really mean anything. But I'm giving it meaning. I'm saying, hey, this is reminding me to go within. This is reminding me to connect with spirit and choose that unconditionally loving presence, to relax a little bit, really. That's how you can use symbols for yourself. You can say, okay, what can I use in my life that will remind me to do X, Y, and Z? And it doesn't have to be spiritual. It could be anything. Maybe you want to get up earlier and have a more productive day, or you're trying to eat better, or, you're trying to look for a new job or a new something, and you want to use something to inspire you. What do you see in the world that gives you that feeling of inspiration? And use it to your benefit, but know what you're doing. It's just a symbol, and I'm giving it meaning that it probably doesn't really have, but it's helping me, right? It's that stepping stone to get me to where I need to be. That's what I want to bring to the idea of symbols, that they're not inherently anything. When people do sacred rituals and sacred circles, but there's rites of passage that a lot of indigenous cultures do, and they have a ceremony. Now, does that ceremony mean something to everyone involved? Absolutely it does. But in and of itself, it's just there to remind you of something deeper. And that's what I'm getting at. It's the connection to the ethereal. It's pulling you into something deeper. And that would be the purpose of the symbol, if we're looking at it through the eyes of spirit. Now, if you're looking at it through the eyes of the so-called devil, then you're going to be attached to the world of separation and form and that whole deal. And that's what temptation is, just the idea to separate and make everything real and make everything mean something, and maybe it doesn't. And that's what I'm getting at today is, what does it mean to you? What do symbols mean to you? Does the devil mean anything? Does God mean anything? And does anything in your life that you use regularly give you deeper purpose? Maybe it's even spending time with a certain someone. Have you ever been around a person and you just love them so much, and every time you're with them, you just feel uplifted? It's like, oh, that's always such a great time. When we get together and we have that hour together, I always feel amazing afterwards. There's just something happening between the two of you, and it's on a much deeper level. That's a symbol. That's a symbol, and it's pulling you into that unconditionally loving place. That feeling of we're joining together here. It's a mutual connection. And something within it is pulling you together, and it's almost as if you know that you're both the same. And when you have things like this in your life, again, they're just reminders of home. That symbolism is reminding you of something greater. So pick something in your life. If you need a reminder, then maybe you don't. Maybe you're somebody who just rolls with it all the time. You feel connected all the time, and you don't really need the symbolism anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do, if you're somebody who likes that reminder, then pick something in the world that speaks to you as a reminder to connect, as a reminder to ask to see clearly. Like last episode, I said, you can turn your prayer, instead of asking for things of the world and bargaining with God, you can ask Spirit to see clearly. I'm handing this over to you because I don't get it. I want to see through your eyes. The symbol that you create, or maybe you have a beautiful bracelet or a necklace or You put a picture on your phone that reminds you of something. I mean, it could be anything that you can look at throughout the day. You just turn the phone on and there's that beautiful scenery that you love, that natural setting, or a picture of someone that you don't get to see all the time, but just their image will bring you back to peace. That symbol that brings you to clarity, to comfort, to relaxation and serenity. That's what symbols can do for us. They're reminders. And as A Course in Miracles would say, it's just a memory. They're just memories of home, but in and of themselves, they don't really mean anything. The only sacred anything is God. So whatever's going on in the world is just pointing us in that direction. So I hope this can bring some clarity if you are dealing with evil symbols, that they bother you. Maybe look into it. Like, are they really as bad as I think? Or are some people turning them into that? And that could be happening. Groups can turn things into evil things. But do you believe it? Do you believe in evil? Do you believe in a physical entity? Look at what it is that you believe, and then use the symbolism that brings you peace in your life to your advantage. Use it as a reminder. Make your space gorgeous, full of symbols, full of rocks, full of nature, whatever it is for you, and see if that can help you connect to your spiritual self. So remember, before you go thinking everything in the world is evil, maybe take a step back and say, I don't know, does it really mean anything at all? Or is this just a collective observation trying to make me think it means something when it doesn't? So I hope you enjoyed today's show and think about all the different ways in which you can have symbolism in your life, including maybe tonight you drift off into some really crazy dream that wakes you up. We'll see you all next week. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. If it resonated, please share, follow, and drop a review with your takeaways. It really means a lot. Visit my website at livelikeeden.com to subscribe for weekly reminders and blogs, or sign up for a free 30-minute consult to explore one-on-one guidance sessions if you're really struggling in Awakening's darkness. Take my Awakening quiz to get a personal podcast playlist that meets you exactly where you're at. See you next week for another deep dive.